Well, hello there. It's been a month, about a month, I suppose. Um, I completely forgot how I start my videos, but that's okay. This time we're getting into Writers Aren't Always Right, episode 5. Is this the fifth? Is this the fifth time's the charm? Or is this the sixth time's the charm? I completely lost count. I forgot to check my past videos. Anyway, how to write a fiction novel is what I googled, and let's get into this. First, we need a Fox note, by the way, to you if you're watching this screen at all, watching your computer or phone or whatever. Um, Look at my nice flowery background that I have now that I created. Anyway, Fox note. I'm going to react. I'm going to give my opinions, and the purpose is this advice, writing advice, really helpful, and does it give what the article title says? Um, that's it. Yeah. And the good thing is that you can have me on in the background because I will tell you everything, and you can be doing things. You can be washing dishes. You can be, I don't know, going for a run. I don't know, whatever you do, playing games on your phone or whatever. Just be listening. Okay. So these are the, probably already went over this, the top 6 results of my Google search, how to write a fiction novel. And so last time we did number 6, which is from Self-Publishing School, how to write a novel in 11 essential steps with a free template. And so number 5 was actually an article from The Guardian called 10 Rules for Writing Fiction. But this was 13 years old. Also, it's just a bunch of authors giving a bunch of silly tips, including "Don't go to London," which was I don't know what the heck that was. So we're skipping. So we're skipping number 5, and we're going on to number 4, which is Reedsy, How to Write a Novel: 13 Steps from a Best-Selling Writer. Sorry, my throat is all over the place. I haven't talked yet today, so that's why. It's going to be a little bit of that in the beginning. So how to write a novel in 13 steps for my best-selling writer. I have a bit of comment here. So when I first saw this title, I remembered something an author once told me, that best-selling, getting best-selling on your book, it's actually pretty easy to get. Basically, you sell a bunch at one time. So like if you have a bunch of fans and they all go to buy your book at the same time, it sort of like pushes the book up in the algorithm or something. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're great and awesome, but it could mean that you're great and awesome. So if a bunch of people are buying your book, that makes you best selling. So what I wanted to say is that best-selling doesn't mean that this article was more trustworthy than an article written by like a regular writer. Like if the writer isn't selling any books or anything, it's not like it's more credible. Also, I heard that New York Times best-selling isn't the same as Amazon best-selling. If anyone knows anything about this, please let me know in the comments. So yeah, so we're moving on, and first I want to say that this is going to be a two-parter. It's the first on this channel to have a two-parter. Because, well, 13 steps is not so bad, is it? Right? It's just 13 steps. No, but Reedsy is very detailed. Every step was really, really long. There was a lot to cover, a lot that they covered, lot to go over. So I thought, you know what, I think if I did this all in one video, it's going to be 2 or 3 hours or something like that. Ridiculous. And I'm getting a little bit of a sense as I make more videos how long something is probably going to take. But I do this without a script, so I don't really know how long I'm actually going to be talking. So, but anyway, to be on the safe side, I made this a two-parter. There's 13 steps, so it was kind of awkward to make this into a two-parter because do I do 7 and then 6 or 6 and then 7? I wish it was 12 steps, and that would be so easy to separate into 2 parts. But I looked at the first 7, and then I felt that stopping at 7, so would be a good cutoff point. So we're doing 1 to 7 in part 1. So let's get into this. So in the beginning of the article, they give a little bit of thing before they get into the steps. And it says, before I get into this, I want to make it clear that 2 things. First, I forgot to take off dark mode, and then I started screenshotting, and then halfway through I was like, oh wait, I forgot to take off. All of these are like black with white. So, but it's no problem for you, right? You're not actually looking at the screen, or you might be, but you probably aren't. So anyway, that's why this looks a little bit weird. And the second thing was, I had a second thing. I just completely left my brain just now. Just blank. Just nothing right now. So why don't we just, I really just had a, you know, when you're talking and then suddenly your brain just decides to jump out the window and go on vacation for like a few hours or something like that. I haven't had coffee yet. Maybe that's why this is happening. Oh, I remember. I wanted to say that even though I screenshot these when I'm not actually reading them, I'm sort of skimming them. So I might pick up words and things like little keywords and make little comments on those keywords, but those comments might not actually be accurate when I'm making the slides because I'm not actually reading the text, because I try not to read the text as much as possible because I want this to be like a first reaction type of thing. And so that we're breaking this down together. Okay, well let's just get into it. You'll see what I mean. Okay, let's read. Writing a novel is an exhilarating and daunting process. How do you go about transforming a simple idea into a powerful narrative that grips readers from start to finish? Crafting a long-form narrative can be challenging, and it requires skillfully weaving together various story elements. In this article, we will break down the major steps of novel writing into manageable pieces, organized into 3 categories: before, during, and after you write your manuscript. I don't know why I said it like that at the end. Okay, so yes, so these are steps. So when I say the word steps, it's like my thought is that, okay, this is the order in which I have to do the things. You know, like step 1, step 2, step 3, you know, it's not like these are the 13 important things to know when writing a novel, or the 13 essential elements to creating a novel of your dreams. You know, it's not like that. It's just steps. So I'm going to be looking at this article in that this is the order in which this supposedly credible best-selling writer is saying that you have to follow these steps if you want to write a novel. Okay, and since it's from this best-selling writer, I'm guessing that they're trying to go for if you want to sell a best-selling novel. I mean, maybe they're not saying anything like that, but they could be. We don't know. So, before, during, and after. So, after you write your manuscript, I did see like the 13th step was something about publishing your novel, how to get it published or querying and that sort of stuff. So I don't know what part 2 is going to be like. We're probably not going to get into that. The parts that I'm going to be covering for this article is before and during. So let's get into that. Yeah, I forgot that. On the screen, my little fox avatar is wiggling. I forgot that I put that in there like that. Okay. We're moving on. Okay, first step. Now, this is the first step. Pick a story idea with novel potential. And when I first saw this title, I thought, okay, what do you mean by novel potential? Do you mean that novel? Because novel can also mean new. Did you know that? Did you know that novel can also mean new, like a novel idea? When you say a novel idea, you mean a new idea. Do they mean novel as in new, or novel as in that it has a potential to be a novel? I don't know. So we're going to get into that, I guess. Let's read. Every story starts with an idea. You might be lucky, like J.R.R. Tolkien, who was marking exam papers when a thought popped into his head. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. You might be like Jennifer Egan, who saw a wallet left in a public bathroom and imagined the repercussions of a character stealing it, which set the Pulitzer Prize winner a visit from the Goon Squad in process. Or you might follow Khaled Hosseini, whose The Kite Runner was sparked by watching a news report on TV. Okay, we're going to move on. There's more to this text, so we're just going to move on and we're going to go back. Ideas come in all shapes and sizes. They can appear when you least expect them. So making a note is important. One writer claims that if you don't write an idea down in 5 minutes, you'll forget it. I don't know if that is true, but it's a good maxim to have in mind. Many novelists I know keep a notebook of ideas, both large and small. Sometimes the idea they pick up on they'll have had much earlier, but whatever reason now feels the time to write it. Certainly, the more ideas you have, the more options you'll have to write. Okay. Let's just go back for a second. There was a section, so I'm going to go back for a second. Okay, so it is true. Every story starts with an idea. What does it? I'm starting to pick things up and diddling things with my fingers. Like I'm starting to pick up like little, the strap for my wires. You can hear it. Is that ASMR? I don't know. I'm going to try to not do anything with my fingers because it's going to mess with the audio. Okay, so every story starts with an idea. That is true. And then they mention a bunch of prominent writers, important writer people here. Khaled Hosseini, I haven't actually read The Kite Runner. I watched the movie, which was really good. I did read his book, one of his books, A Thousand Splendid Suns, and oh my gosh, that was like the easiest 5-star read ever. Anyway, what I'm responding to here. Yeah, they mentioned some big writers. They say even these big writers, they had like some random idea and that turned into a book. So you can do it too, is basically what they're saying. So ideas come in all shapes and sizes and they can appear when you least expect them. Yes. So making a note is important. Well, it depends on the person, I think, because like maybe if making a note is already like a habit for you, or if writing it down is like it helps you remember things, that writing down things helps you remember things, then like maybe it's good to do that. Personally for me, even when I had first started writing, and if I had an idea, I would really just let it cook inside my brain before I write anything down. Because for me, once I start writing it down, I want to actually get into it. I don't want to just write a note and then leave it for later. I did, though, have like a idea session. I did these things like idea sessions. So I would sit down at the computer and I would just think, okay, I'm going to think of a bunch of story ideas right now. Just random, and I would just pick things like just like things like stars, and then think of a story that has to do with stars. I think of shadows and think of a story that has to do with shadows, something like that. And I would do these idea sessions and I would just type them up. And the interesting thing was the first 3 ideas would be very, very simple, like one sentence or a few words even. And as I move on, as I'm doing this, my ideas start becoming like paragraphs long. So I start actually writing the story, kind of like a miniature synopsis for the story. So yeah, so I did things like that. I didn't really like if I have an idea, then I would just write it down. Some people do this. Some people do this. And if like you already have a habit of writing things down, it's good. And maybe for people who just don't know what to do, don't know how to start writing, maybe it's good if you have a notebook of ideas. I went to this creative writing class in college, and the teacher said that every writer has a writer's notebook. And at the time, I thought, oh, that's cool. I've never had a writer's notebook before. Maybe I'll try that. I quickly abandoned it because I'm just not someone who writes their thoughts down. I just keep it in my brain, let it cook for like weeks and weeks and weeks. And then when I feel like it's cooked enough, then I finally start writing it down, or I might just leave it, let it go, let it go, let it go. So that's what I did. So I guess making a note is important, yes, but if it's not for you, like if you don't, it's okay if it's not for you. So although that professor said every writer has a writer's notebook, that no, you don't have to have a writer's notebook if that doesn't seem to match with you, your habits or personality or whatever. Anyway, that was a little bit long. Yeah, so the next sentence, it says, if you don't write an idea down in 5 minutes, you'll forget it. I've kept an idea in there are several ideas that I've kept in my head. I have not written down, but I haven't forgotten them. It really depends on you. You know, if you really think that you're going to forget it in 5 minutes, yes, do write it down. Do have a notebook of ideas. You do you, I do me, you know. Yeah, so and if you don't know if it's for you or not, you could just try it. Because I thought having a writer's notebook was kind of cool. You know, you have a little notebook of all your secret ideas and stuff like that, and that you can go back to and reminisce. Oh yeah, I remember that time when I had this idea, and maybe I'll use this for something. I thought that would be cool, but I quickly abandoned it. It wasn't for me. But it could be for you. You try your stuff. So I actually don't know if any of my writer friends on like Instagram or Facebook, actually I have more writer friends on Instagram than Facebook, to be honest. But yeah, Instagram is a nice place to meet writers, other writers, that is. I don't know if they have writer notebooks. They might have writer notebooks. I know some of them they draw, so some of them have like sketchbooks, where they have little sketches of their characters. I don't know about ideas. I know a bunch of writers who have sticky notes of ideas, but that's more like when you really get into the plotting of it. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, yeah. And it says the more ideas you have, the more options you'll have to write. That is true. That's true. Okay. Okay. So, the next part of pick a story idea with novel. This is just the first part. I was telling you. See, I told you how lengthy these things are. Is your idea novel worthy? How do you know if what you've got is the inspiration for a novel rather than a short story or a novella? There's no definitive answer here, but there are two things to look out for. I just noticed that there is no period after to look out for on this text. Haha, I found a little thing that they forgot. Firstly, a novel allows you the space to show how a character changes over time. Let me reread that. It didn't get into my brain. Firstly, a novel allows you the space to show how a character changes over time, whereas a short story is often more about a vignette. I never really know how to pronounce this, or an individual moment. Secondly, if an idea is fit for a novel, it'll nag away at you, a thread asking to be pulled to see where it goes. if you find yourself coming back to an idea, then that's probably one to explore. Another starting point or essential element for writing a novel will come in the form of the people who will populate your stories, the protagonists. Okay, so I have this picture of a guy climbing a snowy hole in the ground, and I wrote explore because I picked up on this word explore when it says if you find yourself coming back to an idea, then that's probably one to explore. So I thought explore. I'm just going to put a picture here of a guy exploring. So that's what I told you earlier about that I just skim and find keywords and then I put images on the slides. So yeah, that's what that was. Okay. If an idea is novel worthy, I mean that's a really important question, and sometimes even I ask myself that when I have like a bunch of story ideas, and some of them go further than others. Some of them turn into. There was one that I thought it would just be a short story. It turned into a 4-book series, but I didn't know that at the time. That happened much later. Yeah, so I asked myself, is this worth exploring further? So here, what they're saying, what Reedsy Team is saying, as you can see. Oh, I forgot to say that this article was written in 2023, June 23. So it's actually quite a recent article. So that's why I thought, this is interesting. What are people saying in the recent days? So a novel allows you the space to show how a character changes over time. That is, yes, I mean, usually in a novel, you would have like the character, if they are, think that they are unworthy in the beginning, through the story they would grow and learn and grow and learn. So yeah, the story does allow, it gives the space. That's a weird, I don't know, this first sentence just is so weird to me. Not this first sentence, it's like the third sentence. Yeah, short story is usually like a glimpse into a character's life, like a small, teeny tiny moment. Yeah. If an idea is fit for a novel, nag away at you. I don't know about that because I've had ideas for stories that nag away at me. And then I start writing them down, and then they don't turn into anything more than just, I don't know, a 1-page short story or something like that. So I don't know exactly how you would determine whether a novel has potential to be a long form novel. That's what they're saying here, basically. If you find yourself coming back to an idea, then that's probably one to explore. I mean, there are a bunch of ideas that I find myself coming back to, but the thing is that I have to determine whether or not that idea is ready to be explored in full length. That's why I was saying about that I let ideas cook in my head for a long time before even writing them down, because if I write them down prematurely, like if I write them down and they weren't ready to be written down yet, they would just end up being like short stories that go nowhere or that I forget about later on. Because once I've written them down, I'm like, oh, I'm satisfied, I wrote them down, so I'm not going to even go back to them or explore further. And those, if I given it time to cook in my head, then I might have written it in longer form. See what I mean? I don't know, because I don't know. Oh, how would people decide if something has a novel potential. I think the key thing here, the important thing here, not important thing, is that this first section, this first step in this Reedsy article shouldn't have gone in this far. They should just say, write your ideas down and just end there. And this, how to know if it has potential, I think it depends on how experienced of a writer you are too. Because I know there are some ideas that I had. There were some ideas actually that I had years and years ago, like about 10 years ago, and they have ended up into a 4-book series more recently. But at that time, I didn't feel like it had any particular potential. So even if it was nagging away at me and stuff like that, I didn't really feel like at that time that it would be more than the short story. That's something that I've learned how to expand on ideas the more I started writing. And in the beginning, I didn't know how to expand on ideas. I didn't know how to turn something into a long form novel. I didn't know. So I think this kind of step, this step should have ended just about writing down ideas. And then this other part, just don't even think about this other part. This comes with time, experience. And that's my opinion anyway. I don't know. What do you think? I feel like I've talked too long of this first point. Let's just move on. Okay, develop your main characters. The next thing they say to this, to develop your main characters. So, my little fox avatar is like, because, okay, let's just read. My rule of thumb. This is not me saying it. Okay, this is the whoever wrote this article, Reedsy Team. I wish they had a name. My rule of thumb in writing is that a reader will read on for one of two reasons. Either they care about the characters, or they want to know what happens next, or in an ideal world, both. Now, different people will tell you that character or plot are the most important element when writing. In truth, it's a bit more complicated than that. In a good novel, the main character or protagonist should shape the plot, and the plot should shape the protagonist. So you need both core elements in there, and those two core elements are entwined rather than being separate entities. That is true. I mean, there was some I'm not speaking right now. There was some discussion going on the Wacky Writers Forum, which I'm on, and you can join for free if you're interested. About plot or character kind of thing, but the plot and the character are sort of entwined. So you can't have plot without character, and the character can't develop without there being some sort of plot to carry that development through. So, yeah. The reason my fox avatar is doing a little head shake is that developing main characters being like the first step, I don't personally, since I'm a pantser, I don't develop my characters so much in the beginning. I do that as I'm writing. So for me, this step isn't like the next step for me, because plot and character just go so hand in hand. I usually write character-driven stories, so the character's development or their wants and needs are what is driving the plot. So I start thinking about both at the same time, the plot and the character at the same time. So they're sort of developing at the same time, the plot and the character. Is what I'm saying. So the next part in the second step, I really need to move on. Characters matter because when written well, readers become invested in what happens to them. You can develop the most brilliant, twisting narrative, but if the reader doesn't care how the protagonist ends up, you're in trouble as a writer. As we said above, one of the strengths of the novel is that it gives you the space to show how characters change over time. How do characters change? Firstly, they do so by being put in a position where they have to make decisions, difficult decisions, and difficult decisions with consequences. That's how we find out who they really are. Secondly, they need to start from somewhere where they need to change. Give them flaws, vulnerabilities, and foibles for them to overcome. This is what makes them human, and the reason why readers respond to and care about them. As said earlier, it's important to have both a great character and an interesting plot, which you can develop by making your character face some adversities. So I have a picture of wolves saying, "Care for them," because I want you to care for the characters, readers. Okay, so yeah, characters matter because when written well, readers become invested in what happens to them. Yeah. It's really important for characters. If you heard any beeps and stuff, I'm just turning my heater on and off. Okay. So yeah, you can develop the most brilliant twisting narrative, but if the reader doesn't care how the protagonist ends up, you're in trouble as a writer. That is true. There was a book, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Yes, that's the title of the book. That book is the first time I realized, when I read that book for the first time, when it first came out. I think it was a while that I read it, not when it came out, but I was struggling with how to write a character that readers want to read. I was struggling to figure out what is it about these books that I like that I want to read on. And then I realized it's because I care about what happens to them. I want to cheer them on. So yes, cheering them on. Write a character that you want the readers to cheer on. Even if that character in the beginning might be a slightly unlikable character, you still want to see them either succeed or be happy, or you want to see what they're getting up to, and you see a sort of vulnerable side of them, and then you start caring for them. You're like, I want to know what happens to you. I want to know what you're going to get up to and how you're going to succeed, and if you're going to get your goals or not. I want to know what happens, so I'm going to read the book. So Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, the protagonist, I think his name was Jacob, and was his name Jacob? Oh no, now I can't remember. Anyway, I don't have that book with me right now. So I was thinking, why is it that I want to read about him? And why is it at the end of the story that I still want to read what happens to him? That's because I care and I'm cheering him on. So I decided, okay, I'm going to try to write a character that people want to care about. I just realized that the word character and care are similar, although they're not spelled the same. I know that. You have to write a character. Get it? All right. So let's move on. The character changing over time, spaced. It's just a weird thing to say that a novel gives you space to show how the characters change over time. Like, why would you phrase it like that? That is such a weird phrase. Yes, characters make decisions. They make difficult decisions with consequences, and that's how we find out. Yeah, because when you're faced with a difficult decision, you definitely do show your true side. Like, if you need to choose between friend and family, like are you going to choose your friends over your family, or your family over your friends, or if you're going to choose to leave your hometown to figure out your secret power, or are you going to stay and protect your hometown? Difficult decisions. So, yeah, and you also need to give them flaws and vulnerabilities. Foibles? I really haven't heard anyone use this word foible before. You mean like difficulties for them to overcome, right? Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, facing some adversities is probably a better way to say it that they have down there. Okay, so after you have what Reedsy is saying, that after you have an idea, you develop a character, the next thing you need to do is establish central conflict and stakes. Not yummy steaks, just stakes. Okay. So, that drama in the novel is usually built around some sort of central conflict. This conflict creates a dramatic tension that compels the reader to read on. They want to see the outcome of that conflict resolved. The ultimate resolution of the conflict hopefully creates a satisfying ending to the narrative. Okay. Conflicts come in many types, but in two main forms, external and internal. External conflict is one between the protagonist and an antagonist of some sort, be it a rival lover, a fire-breathing dragon, an oppressive system. Internal conflict is where the focus of the struggle is within that individual, the struggle of competing life choices, say, or overcoming addiction. That might not sound as dramatic, but written well, internal conflict can often be even more powerful. A character changes, as we said above, when they are put in a position of making decisions with consequences. Those consequences are important. It isn't enough for a character to have a goal or a dream or something they need to achieve to slay a dragon. There also needs to be consequences if they don't get what they're after. The dragon burns their house down. Upping the stakes heightens the drama all around. Now you have enough ingredients to start writing your novel, but before you do that, it can be useful to tighten them all up into a synopsis. Ugh. That's terrifying. That is simply terrifying. My avatar is like, oh my god, not a synopsis. I don't know where that voice came from. Okay, so we're going back to the beginning of established central conflicts and stakes. So, yes, if you want people to care, you need to shove your character into terrible situations. Sorry, but you do. That's what a story is. Okay. So, I really need a drink of coffee. You drink your water, I'll drink my coffee. I did something different to my coffee today, and it came out pretty good. Okay. Why is this so long? Why is this article so freaking long? Okay, so conflicts come in many types, but in two main external. Okay, so external and internal conflicts. I heard this term first when who was it? What was her name? Some YouTuber, YouTuber said these words. Just completely what was her name? I'm completely blanking on her name. My brain isn't awake. I thought of her name like 10 minutes ago, and then I just completely forgot her name. Oh, Abby Emmons? Abby Emmons? I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Abby Emmons. Yes. Yes, she's a popular? She's a popular? Yeah, I guess she's popular. She's popular writer, tuber. She's the one that first introduced me to these terms, external and internal conflict. I think she said external conflict. So the two of them, first, the external conflict, yes, arrival of it. So external means it's outside of the character, outside of the character's feelings and thoughts. That's what that means. So the external conflict could be maybe, I don't know, they mentioned like a rival lover, fire breathing dragon, an oppressive system, a difficult family situation, an oppressive enemy, what else? A dangerous ring, some royalty drama that's going on, that could threaten your or the character's position. What else? A neighbor that you don't like, maybe. Those sorts of things are external because they're outside of the character. They could also be outside of the character's control. Like an oppressive system, it's not like you can actually do something about it at the moment. So, and the internal conflict is what is within the individual. So maybe, oh, they don't think that they're worthy, or they have low self-esteem. They, some life choice, they are called to war, but they also are sort of the primary caregiver to their siblings. They want to take care of their siblings, but they also want to make their family proud, but they don't feel like they're, I don't know, the little things that are inside of your character. Yeah, so the internal conflicts, these are the sort of thinky, feely type of conflicts, the emotion type of conflicts. Some emotion would come out with these internal ones. And the external ones are like, oh my gosh, there's a dragon who is going to burn the house down. And that is bad. And at the same time, I am struggling to take care of my siblings. And one of them is half dragon. I don't know. Whatever. But anyway, so the character changes. So they put in these positions of making these decisions. The conflict between the external and the external conflict and the internal conflict. The protagonist is having to struggle with both of these things. Life is hard. So the consequences of their decisions. So like if they, I'm trying to think of stories that aren't my story, but I just keep thinking about my story because it's exactly dealing with really showing this external and internal conflict with my current character of the story that I'm writing. So basically the protagonist, she is living in a place where they're oppressed by their enemy, and she really wants to free her race from these enemies, and she potentially has the power to do so, but freeing them could also mean punishment onto her family if they find out, what they're going to find out that it's her. She wants to protect her sister. She really, really wants to protect her sister, and that's like her decision, the consequences of her decision. Like she is going to decide to that in the long term, freeing her race is like protecting her sister. Like she thinks that that's the right choice, but when she makes that decision, it ends up putting her family in danger. So that is like the consequence, I think. I don't really know what I'm doing either, okay? Okay, we're all just learning here at the same time. So, I don't know. Basically, I agree with what they're saying here. That's the basic gist of the thing. There's a picture of a seahorse, dragon horse, seahorse. When I looked up dragon in stock photos in the slides, this is what came up. So it's not a dragon, but it's close. So like if you're looking at the screen wondering what that was. Yeah. Consequences if they don't get what they're after. Yeah. So basically, yeah, one of the consequences. So my protagonist is the she tries to free her kind by these enemies by destroying the barrier that her race is like surrounded by. Like she destroys it, but the sort of consequence is that for punishment they're captured. So in the end, it's like she didn't get what she was after, which is freedom and protection of her sister. Like she wasn't able to protect her sister, and she wasn't really able to save her race from the oppressive enemies. So now what is she going to do? That's from my example. I don't know what I'm doing either, okay? This consequence, this external and internal conflict thing is just still really, really fresh in my noggin, okay? So we're moving on to a synopsis, apparently, which I do not like. Write a logline or synopsis. So I'm a pantser, so I don't write this until after I've finished writing and editing the story. But if you want to follow these steps and write it right here, right now, because you feel like you want to, then that's fine. You can do that. I'm just going to go over this, okay? So far, you've got your story idea, your central characters, and your sense of conflict and stakes. Now is the time to distill this down into a narrative. Different writers approach this planning stage in different ways. See, planning stage. I'm not a planner, I'm a pantser. As we'll come to in a moment, but for anyone starting a novel, having a clear sense of what is at the heart of a story is crucial. There are a lot of different terms used here. Pitch, elevator pitch, logline, shoutline. Shoutline? What the heck is a shout? I've never heard of that term shoutline until this article. What the heck is that? Or the hook of your synopsis. But whatever the terminology, the idea remains the same. This is to summarize your story in as few words as possible. A couple of dozen words, say, or perhaps a single sentence. This exercise will force you to think about what your novel is fundamentally about. What is the conflict at the core of the story? What are the challenges facing your main protagonist? What do they have at stake? I do this at the editing stage. I don't do this in the beginning. This is really steps for a planner, or if you really don't know if you're a pantser or a planner or a planter or whatever. Okay. So, okay. If you need some help as you go through the steps in this guide, you can fill in this template. Let's go over this template. My story is a genre novel. It's told from perspective and is set in place and time period. It follows protagonist who wants goal because motivation, but conflict doesn't make that easy, putting stake at risk. Yeah, this is a good exercise, I suppose. I do this at the editing stage because for me the first draft is just getting all my ideas out. So I'm not going to do this before, but you can if you want to. I'm not going to. It's not an easy thing to do to write this summarizing sentence or two. In fact, they might be the most difficult sentences to get down in the whole writing process, but it is really useful in helping you to clarify what your book is about before you begin. When you're stuck in the middle of the writing, it will be there for you to refer back to. And further down the line, when you finish the novel, it will prove invaluable in pitching to agents, publishers, and readers. Another particularly important step to prepare for the writing part is to outline your plot into different key story points. This is the moment that I realized that these steps are for planners. Yes, if you really want to go ahead and plan your novel, like the organized person you are. I am organized in a disorganized way, so this really is not for me. I tried doing this. But then I wasn't able to write the story for 2 years, so I'm not going to. But you can if you want to. I'm not trying to say this in like, oh my gosh, I hate this synopsis. I mean, I do, but it is useful, okay, when you get down the line. For me, I mean, I do it later, and for you, maybe you can do it in the beginning. It's like your choice. So, yeah. So, if we go back a little bit, yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything to say about logline or synopsis. I just gotta say that it's hard. That's really all I have. That's really all I have. Okay. Structure your plot. That's the fifth step, by the way. There's no right answer here as to how much planning you should do before you write. It very much depends on the sort of writer you are. Some writers find planning out their novel before start. Okay, something is wrong with this sentence. Some writers find planning out their novel before start gives them confidence and reassurance, knowing where their book is going to go. There's something wrong with that sentence. Before starting, I think. Yes. Wait. Some writers find planning out their novel before starting. Yeah, it should have been that. But others find this level of detail restrictive. They're driven more by the freedom of discovering where the writing might take them. That is me. That is definitely me. That is so me. Okay. So, despite them, they should have this fifth structure plot thing before the synopsis thing, because it's right from the synopsis part that you realize that these are steps for planners. But now they're saying that there is no right answer here, how much planning you should do before you write. I think this log-length synopsis part is also part of a planner's process. I don't think all pantsers actually do this. Usually we just start writing. So I think that this fifth step should have been the fourth step, and the fourth step should have been the fifth step. So, yeah, even the alpacas are confused. There's no right answer. So, okay. Well, now they're getting into it. I see the word pantser. This is sometimes described as a debate between planners and pantsers, those who fly by the seat of their pants. In reality, most writers sit somewhere on a sliding scale between the two extremes. Find your sweet spot and go from there. That's exactly what it says. There's an exclamation point at the end of that sentence, okay? If you're a planning type, there's plenty of established story structures out there to build your story around. Popular theories include the Save the Cat model in Christopher Vogler's Hero's Journey. Then there are books such as Christopher Booker's The 7 Basic Plots. That's another Christopher. Which suggests that all stories are one of, well, you can probably work that out. Wait, what? What was that? Then there are books such as Christopher Booker's The 7 Basic Plots, which suggest that all stories are one of, well, you can probably work that out. 7, which suggests that all stories are one of 7 basic plots. Is that what they're trying to say? I don't know. Whatever. Okay. Whatever the structure, most stories follow the underlying principle of having a beginning, middle, and end, and one that usually results in a process of change. So even if you're pantsing rather than planning, it's helpful to know your direction of travel, though you might not yet know how your story is going to get there. Yeah, so even though I pants, I do have a vague idea of a beginning, middle, and end. I know the beginning and basically what I want to have happen in the middle and how the story is going to end. Usually I have a pretty good idea of how I want the story to end, and basically what I'm doing is that I'm pantsing towards the ending, making sure that whatever is happening is just going towards the ending. So the ending is usually pretty solid for me, I would say. Getting there, yeah, the ending doesn't really change for me, actually. Like I could be pantsing the entire rest of the story, and the ending really doesn't, like, if I've decided, okay, this is what I want to have to happen at the end, it's going to happen. It is definitely going to happen, even though I'm pantsing. So yeah, and in the middle, anything can happen in the middle, really. There could be twists and turns, and somehow I get to the ending that I've planned. Sort of planned. It's really just a vague idea. I don't even write these things down. I just know where I'm going to go, and I just try to get there. So, yeah. So, how you find out if you're a planner or a pantser? Basically, I would just say to just try writing a story. Just a short story. I'm not saying a long story, but the way I did it was I just start writing down stories. Maybe they don't all have an ending, even. In the beginning, none of my stories had endings. I just had an idea and I just start writing. See where it takes you. Just explore. And if that exploration isn't your style, try doing this planning. Try really planning out every beat of the story. There's lots of books and the 3-act story structure. I think it's called the 3-act story structure. It's pretty popular. You can look it up and it'll give you like a diagram of climax and resolution and that sort of thing. And you can just follow that. You can just follow that and just write out your outline with bullet points or whatever and just see if that works for you. I didn't do any bullet point things, but I did try outlining a story and doing it that way. But then I couldn't write the story for 2 years because I felt so restricted. And then when I completely ignored the outline and just kept the basic idea of the plot in my head and pants the whole thing, I wrote 4 books. So I'm a pantser at heart. I figured that out. But it's trial and error. It really is. And it's fine. Don't rush yourself. You're learning. It's fine. Okay, so finally, remember what we said earlier about plot and character being entwined. Your character's journey shouldn't be separate to what happens in the story. Indeed, sometimes it can be helpful to work out the character's journey of change first and shape the plot around that rather than the other way around. Now let's consider which perspective you're going to write your story from. Yeah, so I made a comment here that says, doesn't seem to match with me, but this isn't about me, is it? Not a pantser. So, I mean, I already addressed that, and I was just looking at this section here when I wrote that comment in these slides. I wasn't looking at the previous sections because I hadn't read it yet. But yeah, it's not about me. It's about planners, but obviously it's fine if you're a pantser too. It's fine. It's fine. It's fun. You can see what works for you. You experiment. I mean, I tried being a planner to see maybe if that's better, but it wasn't for me. So, yeah. Okay, pick a point of view. So, the thing about pantsers, or at least this thing about me, is that I don't pick a point of view after creating a character. When I'm first start writing, I already know what point of view I'm going to go for. And that's always third person. And the reason it's third person is because personally, when I read, I write fantasy. If you didn't know, I usually write fantasy stories. I can't seem to stay out of it. I write fantasy stories, and when I read fantasy stories, although I have read very good fantasy stories which are in first person, I find that third person is easier for me to get into it, especially if it's a really fantastical world and the character has dealing with conflicts and stuff, which I wouldn't because I live in a real world where there is no magic. I don't know personally what it's like to have magical powers. So if I'm reading about a character who's struggling that she has magical powers, I can't really relate to that. Or if she's struggling to figure out if she's in the right career in a magical world where careers are all magical based. I don't know about that, right? I don't know. I don't relate to that. So it's easier for me to read those sort of stories in third person. Also, especially if the protagonist isn't human, it's a lot easier for me to get into a book if it's in third person, that I'm completely removed from the character and I can sort of understand them a little bit more. But if it's from first person, then the first person it's hard for me to get into a fantasy book. I mean, there are good ones, but I usually stay away from fantasy books that are in first person if they are a very, powerful, magical type of thing. But if they're a kind of thing where a normal person ends up in a fantasy world, then the first person eye is fine. Also, for some reason, middle grade fantasy, it's easy to read them when they're in first person. I don't know why. I haven't dissected this yet. Okay, so we're moving on to pick a point of view. However much plotting you decide to do before you start writing, there are 2 further elements to think about before you start putting pen to paper or finger to keyboard. The first one is to think about which point of view you're going to tell your story from. It is worth thinking about this before you start writing because deciding to change midway through your story is a horribly thankless task. I speak from bitter personal experience. Yeah, I've never had to. I never. Wait, have I? Changed from first to third and third to first, and because I couldn't decide. I did try to do that once, and then I completely scrapped the story and started from scratch. So, I guess kind of. But yeah, you don't want to do that. That is a horrible, horrible task. Because you can miss things. Yeah. So anyway, I don't pick a point of. I was talking about, what was I even talking about before? Third person or first person. That for fantasy, it's always third person for me. So I don't decide which, basically. I really don't decide because my default is third person, past tense, and I stick with that through all my stories. So yeah, I guess I made it really easy for myself. I thought I'm just going to do this. It's going to be my thing. And I'm not even going to think about, so that you don't have to think about what point of view that I'm going to use. I made it easy for myself. You can do whatever you want to do, obviously. Although there might seem a large number of viewpoints you could tell your story from, in reality, most fiction is told from 2 points of view. First person, the I form, and third person, close, he, she, they. Close third person is when the story is witnessed from one character's view at a time, as opposed to third person omniscient, where the story can drop into lots of people's thoughts. Oh. Well, omniscient, okay, so omniscient, lots of people's thoughts, not really italics thoughts, that is. I want to add that, because italics thoughts from multiple points of view is called head hopping, and you don't want to do it because it confuses the reader. Like, whose thoughts is this right now? But, yeah, anyway, don't do second person, it's weird. That's my comment. Don't say you are walking down the hall when you see your mother is talking to a dragon. Don't do that. It's just weird. It's just weird. Unless maybe it's, maybe pick an adventure stories. Maybe they do that. I don't really know when second person is used. I don't know. Maybe on Wattpad. Those, what are they called? Like, those self-insert stories. Yeah. Okay, reading on. Both of these viewpoints have advantages and disadvantages. First person is usually better for intimacy and getting into characters' thoughts. The flip side is that its voice can feel a bit claustrophobic and restrictive in the storytelling. That's true, yeah. Third person close offers you more options and more space to tell your story, but can feel less intimate as a result. Well, it depends on the person. I mean, third person can also feel quite intimate. It depends on how well the story is written. So I don't agree with that. Yeah. There's no right and wrong here in terms of which is the best viewpoint. It depends on the particular demands of the story that you are wanting to write, and it also depends on what you most feel comfortable writing in, or what you most feel comfortable writing in. There's something weird about that. It can be a useful exercise to write a short section in both viewpoints to see which feels the best fit for you before starting to write. You can try that. That's an interesting experiment. Besides choosing a point of view, consider the setting you're going to place your story in. So I wrote here as a comment, POV, point of view, is decided by the character for me. Actually, that's not true, because I did say that I I decided that I'm just going to write in third person past tense, and that is going to be my thing when writing fantasy. Because that is what I enjoy reading too. So I'm just going to stick with that. So yeah, I think what I meant to say with this comment is that the voice of the character is decided by the character for me. So if it's going to be a little bit more sarcastic, or if it's going to be a little bit silly, or if it's going to be serious, that sort of vibe of like the character's voice is decided by the character for me. That's kind of a weird thing to say, but that's the truth. Consider the setting you're going to place your story in. Yes, we're coming up to the setting. This is actually step 7. So this is the last step in this part 1. I don't know how much time has gone by. You tell me. Choose a setting that benefits your story. I made a comment. I don't choose a setting after choosing a character. The character exists in the setting, so it comes at the same time. That's true because, yes. I did mention before that when I start writing the story, I think about the character, the plot, and the setting at the same time in the beginning, because the character is set in something, right, in the beginning. I mean, you can't just start writing a character without putting them anywhere. I could just start writing about someone, maybe Julie Smith has red hair and blue eyes and wears jumpers all the time. And she's very happy and joyful, and she has a dog that talks named Max. And I could just go on and on and on about this character and not set them anywhere, which is weird. She has to be somewhere. And if she's not somewhere, I realize that in the beginning of stories, that if a character is set in a setting, it sort of grounds the reading in a sense. So in the very first sentence, it's good. Not you really want to. I'm not saying that you have to, but I realize that it's good if you have a character set somewhere right in the beginning. So there's this book called The Stormkeeper's Island by Catherine Doyle, and I remember clearly the book is clearly set on a boat going to an island, and the little boy's name is named Fionn Boyle, and that is the story. That is the beginning of the story. So we have the character, which is Fionn, we have the setting, which is the boat, and going somewhere, an island. Okay, so you think, okay, who is this Fionn boy? Why is he on a boat? Why are they going to an island? So you have all these questions, and then those questions are then answered in the next paragraphs, and that's what keeps the reader reading. That's what I recently found out. So when I start writing a story as a pantser, I decided, okay, I need to set this somewhere first. I need to have a character doing something in a setting. So I don't choose a setting after. I mean, basically what they're saying here is that after you write a synopsis, you're choosing the setting after you write the synopsis. I mean, because think about it. They told you to, these Reedsy Team people are telling you to write a synopsis before choosing the setting that benefits your story. That is such a weird thing to do, I think. Because if you're going to write a synopsis, you need a setting, don't you? Don't you? Yeah. Let's just read. The final element to consider before beginning your story is to think about where your story is going to be located. Settings play a surprisingly important part in bringing a story to life. When done well, they add in mood and atmosphere and can act almost like an additional character in your novel. Okay, this is really long. Okay. There are many questions to consider here, and again, it depends a bit on the demands of the story that you are writing. Is your setting going to a real place, a fictional one, or a real place with fictional elements? Is it going to be set in the present day, the past, or at an unspecified time? Are you going to set your story in somewhere you know or need to research to capture properly? Finally, is your setting suited to the story you are telling and serve to accentuate it rather than just acting as a backdrop? If you're writing a novel in genres such as fantasy or science fiction, then you may well need to go into some additional world building as well before you start writing. Here, you may have to consider everything from the rules and mores of society to the existence of magical powers, fantastic beasts, extraterrestrials, and futuristic technology. All of these can have a bearing on the story, so it is better to have a clear setup in your head before you start to write. It's a little different from me because I'm a pantser. I'll get into that a little later. Okay. Whether your story is set in central London or the outer rings of the solar system, some elements of the descriptive detail remain the same. Think about the use of all the different senses, the sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and textures of where you're writing about. Those sorts of small details can help to bring any setting to life, from the familiar to the imaginary. Alright, enough brainstorming and planning. It is time to let the words flow on the page. That is the end of part 1. Yay, we finally made it to the end. I am so glad that we made it to the end. Oh my gosh. All these steps are just so detailed. Okay, which is good, but let's think about the order of the steps later. Okay. Setting. Okay, so yeah. It depends on the demand of the story that you are writing. I think setting is kind of like the characters and the plot are entwined, right? They said the characters and plot are entwined. They go hand in hand. I think setting and characters and plot are entwined, go hand in hand. Because you can't think of the setting as like a separate thing. Otherwise, as they say, acting as a backdrop. Otherwise, it really just sounds like you have these characters and this plot, and you're just going to put it someplace. You're just going to throw it on the stage, and you're just going to have the stage people come in with their cardboard grass and cardboard trees and cardboard castle in the background. That's just what it seems like because it comes after the synopsis. This is a weird step to have here. I don't think it should be here. I think it should be before. It's my idea. So if you're writing in genres such as fantasy or science fiction, additional world building, yes, you're going to have to do that. As a pantser, I do discovery writing. So what it means is that I don't do too much world building in the beginning. I sort of discover the world as I'm writing it. So things might come up, which I'm like, oh, wait, I can put this in, or, oh, that's a good idea, or, oh, I didn't know that was there. Thank you, character, for letting me know. So, yeah, there are definitely things that come up in the pantsing. It's different. It's really different when you're a pantser. This is really all stuff if you're planning. So if you're going to do world building, I would suggest you don't do world building after you write the synopsis. You do world building while you're creating the characters and the conflicts and the plot and everything like that. You do it then. You don't do it after. You'd probably do it after write the synopsis, right? No? I don't know. It just seems weird to think about the setting after you write the synopsis and the logline and everything. It's like it has to be set somewhere. Isn't the setting entwined with the plot? And the characters entwined with the plot? Right? No? I mean, if the world building, if you were talking about like an oppressive system, which could be an external conflict for the character, the oppressive system is part of the world building, right? If it's fantasy. So wouldn't you think about it then? When you're thinking about the external conflicts? I mean, if it goes hand in hand. But if you want to do like extra world building, that would come up later. So this step 7 isn't like choose a setting. This step 7 could be more like think of additional setting elements or something like that. Because you just can't have like a setting that is just nothing but oppressive system and how it works. You need other things like, do people live in, what kind of houses do people live in? What kind of, if the protagonist is like a kid, what kind of, do they go to school? and what school's like, what's a typical family life like, um, what clothes do people wear, what food do they eat, that's all world building. And those are things that you can come up with later. You don't have to come up with it during the plot unless, like, something to do with fashion, like if the story has something to do with fashion, you'd want to think about it while you're thinking about the character, you know. So if, like, the character has some kind of fashion, they want to be a fashion designer, and so, and there's some external and internal conflict with being a fashion designer. So you'd want to think about the fashion and why they can or can't become a fashion designer, what's going on in the world at the time, while you're thinking about the character and the plot, not afterwards, because it goes hand in hand. So I don't know. I don't know if step 7 should be here. I don't know if step 7 should be here. What do you think? Do you think this is the right step to do with the 7th? I don't know if it is. I think it should just be elements, like some other little elements that maybe don't directly affect the character or the plot. Like maybe, I don't know, naming system, like, are there different, if there are different races in your world, do they use different naming systems? Like, do some people have last names and some don't because of some cultural difference or something like that? That's like a really extra thing that you'd add in later, right? So that would be an appropriate step 7, I think. But if it's something that goes hand in hand with the plot, you would think about it with the plot. So, I don't really know. Yeah, the descriptive, some elements of the descriptive details remain the same. Yeah, descriptions, those, like what the nature looks like. Are trees green or are they blue? That sort of thing. That could be something that you would think of later, because if it doesn't directly affect the plot. But the thing is, if it does directly affect the plot, anything, any little world building, whatever element is going to be, you're going to think about it while you're thinking about the characters in the plot, and you're going to do that before the synopsis, I would guess. So that, yes, okay. So we're gonna go right to the very beginning. Right to the beginning. Okay. So I went over these first steps 1 through 7. Pick a story idea. Develop your main characters. Establish a central conflict stakes. Write a log line. Structure a plot. Pick a point of view. Choose a setting. That's the first part, and I went over those. And so I don't think this is the right order for these steps, because when you think 13 steps, you're going to do this in this order, right? You think that the order of these steps is important, right? So if you hear like 13 steps, it's not 13 things to think about in your writing. So you can think about them in any order you want. This is steps. So I'm going to imagine that the Reedsy team is thinking that you're going to follow these in this particular order. So this first part with these 7 steps, okay, I'm going to be very strict about this. So if they want you to follow these steps, these steps in this order, if they want you to follow these steps in this order, these aren't the right order. This isn't the right order, I don't think, in my opinion. Okay, because why would you write a logline and synopsis before you structure your plot and pick a point of view and choose a setting? I think logline and synopsis should be in step 7, because it makes more sense. Because you take a little sneak peek and look at 8. It says establish a writing routine. So that's when you have some idea of your story. So you put the logline synopsis in step 7. Okay, you think about what the story is going to be about. You have a synopsis. if you want to do that. And then you say, okay, how am I going to get into writing this thing? So I think step 4 should be step 7. Everything else should just move up a little bit. So the order should be 1, 2, 3, and then 5, 6, 7, and then 4. That's what it should be, in my opinion, for steps, okay? So going through all the slides again. Because you won't be pitching to agents yet, because you haven't even written the book. So why would you have long length synopsis in a weird place like that? It's a weird thing, Reedsy Team. Also, Reedsy Team, this article, sometimes you write first person I, like I this and I that in the article. Where was it? There was a place where it said I, and I was like, oh yeah, it says my rule of thumb in writing is that a reader will read it. Like, who is this? And then at other times they'd say we. So who are you? Is there more than one person writing this article? Are there 3 people writing this article? Like, what is going on? What is going on? We don't know what is going on. So anyway, and there was some weird, like, a novel is like the space that allows you to develop your character. That is such a weird, I don't know why it sounds so weird to me, but it just sounds so weird to me. So my opinion on these first 7 steps, I'm going to be very strict about them using that word, because my opinion is that that's not the right order. They do cover some good things, okay? They do cover good things, and they do go into a good detail. So for someone who's never written a story before, I think it's pretty easy for them to understand. Although they do need to establish about these terms, planner and pantser, I think more in the beginning, somewhere. To say somewhere along the lines of the planning and the pantsing, so that these steps may be more for planners than pantsers. You know, they could say something like that somewhere more early on in these steps than when they talk about so when they talk about like the structure of your plot, or like the synopsis, you know, they might want to talk about, so I'm just flipping through the slides. They might want to talk about planners and pantsers a little more early on. So I would say that this article is okay so far, because we're just at step 7. I don't know what is in 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, because I haven't even looked at it yet. I didn't even take the screenshots yet, because I really want to react to this almost like as a first time kind of thing. By the way, the word shoutline instead of logline, I've never heard shoutline before. What are you doing? Screaming your story into people's ears? That's a weird word. Anyway, so this is the end of part 1. What do we think so far? So far, so good? So far, so meh, okay, I don't know. Just a little sneak peek if you're watching the screen. This is the color for part 2. Part 1 was a little bit more orange. Part 2 is a little bit more pink. I'll be going over the last half, which is the last 6 steps. I have, when I look over these steps, just by the titles of these steps, I have a little bit more hope for it, I guess. Because it's really about the writing process part. And once planners start writing and once pantsers are writing or editing, I mean, it's more or less the same, I'm guessing. Let's see what they say, though. So I don't know when I'm going to do part 2. I'm hoping it's gonna be during the month of March. Um, I can't really say though because I haven't even made the slides yet. So another little sneak peek. See, it's blank. I haven't even done the screenshots. Nothing yet. So yeah. Well, we'll end here. This is the end of part one. Thank you for listening. Leave your thoughts in the comments about what you think of this article so far. And I'll see you in part two. I usually give my final thoughts on things, but I haven't even finished this article, so yeah. So I'll see you in part two, and yeah, keep a lookout for part two because I'm hoping to get it up soon, at least in the month of March. Yeah, I don't know how long this video was. You tell me.